The darkness of night was broken by a shocking glow. Karen's garage had been transformed into a luminous beacon, visible for blocks. But what Karen didn't know was that this glow-in-the-dark paint was a secret security trap, about to turn her world upside down. Karen stared in disbelief at her garage, now radiating an eerie, glowing hue that illuminated the entire cul-de-sac. What on earth? She muttered, storming outside in her bathrobe. Her neighbor, Sarah, peeked out her window, equally perplexed. Karen, your garage, it's glowing. Karen marched across the driveway, her slippered feet crunching on the gravel. I can see that, Sarah. What is the meaning of this? I have no idea, Sarah stammered. It must be some kind of prank. Karen's eyes narrowed. Prank? This is unacceptable. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. She whirled around and stormed back inside, slamming the door behind her. Grabbing her phone, Karen frantically scrolled through her contacts. Roger, it's Karen. You need to get over here right now. Something unusual has happened to my garage. Her voice trembled with barely contained fury. Within minutes, Roger's pickup truck pulled into the driveway. Karen flagged him down, her expression tense. Look at this, she exclaimed, gesturing toward the glowing garage. Roger whistled low. Well, I'll be. That's some trick paint you've got there, Karen. Trick paint? Karen's voice rose in pitch. This is no trick. Someone has vandalized my property, and I want to know who and why. Roger held up his hands in a placating gesture. Now, Karen, let's not jump to conclusions. It could be an honest mistake. Mistake. Karen's face flushed with outrage. This is my home, Roger. My sanctuary. And someone has violated it. Her fingers tightened around her phone. I'm calling the police. Roger's eyes widened. The police? Karen, I really don't think that's necessary. But Karen was already punching in the numbers, her jaw set with determination. Yes, hello. I'd like to report an incident of vandalism. The siren's wail pierced the night as the police cruiser pulled up to Karen's house. Officer Hernandez stepped out, his expression one of mild exasperation. He'd dealt with Karen's complaints before. All right, ma'am. What seems to be the problem? He asked, approaching Karen and Roger. Officer, look at my garage, Karen exclaimed, gesturing wildly. Someone has covered it in some kind of glow-in-the-dark paint. It's a complete outrage. Officer Hernandez studied the glowing garage, then turned back to Karen. And you believe this was an act of vandalism? Of course it was. Karen's voice rose in pitch. Who else would do something like this? It's a blatant attack on my property. The officer nodded slowly. I see. Well, let's take a look around and see if we can find any evidence. As he began inspecting the garage, Karen shot Roger an accusatory glare. I bet you know something about this, don't you? Roger held up his hands. What? No, Karen, I had nothing to do with this. I'm just as surprised as you are. Uh-huh. Sure you are. Karen narrowed her eyes. You're always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. Before Roger could respond, Officer Hernandez emerged from the garage, a contemplative expression on his face. Well, Mrs. Simmons, I hate to break it to you, but this doesn't appear to be an act of vandalism. Karen's jaw dropped. What? How can you say that? Look at my garage. The paint seems to have been applied evenly and carefully, the officer explained. There's no sign of forced entry or any other damage. It looks more like a deliberate choice rather than a random act of mischief. Deliberate choice? Karen sputtered. Are you saying someone did this on purpose? Officer Hernandez nodded. That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, I can't tell you who did it or why, but this doesn't seem to be a case of vandalism. More of a unique home improvement project, if you will. Karen's face flushed with outrage. Home improvement project? This is an abomination. I demand that you find out who did this and make them pay." The officer sighed. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but without any clear evidence of a crime, there's not much I can do. My advice would be to try and find out who's responsible and have a civil discussion with them. But I can't justify making an arrest over a glowing garage." Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the officer had already turned and headed back to his cruiser. As the siren faded into the distance, she rounded on Roger, her eyes blazing. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'm going to get to the bottom of this, and when I do, someone is going to pay." The next morning, Karen paced back and forth in her living room, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, I understand that, but this is a clear violation of my property rights. Someone has to be held accountable." She paused, listening to the person on the other end of the line. "The Homeowners Association. Of course, I've contacted them. They're the ones who should be taking action here." Another pause, then Karen's expression darkened. "What do you mean? There's nothing they can do. This is an outrage. I pay my dues every month, and this is the kind of shoddy, incompetent service I get in return." She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "Look, I don't care what your policy says. This is my home, and I have a right to live in a neighborhood that's free from vandalism and glowing garages." Karen's voice rose to a near shout as she listened to the HOA representative's response. "Well, then I demand to speak to your supervisor. This is unacceptable, and I won't stand for it." After a few more moments of heated discussion, Karen finally hung up, her face flushed with anger. "Useless, the lot of them," she muttered, tossing her phone onto the couch. Just then, the doorbell rang. Karen steeled herself, fully expecting another infuriating interaction. But when she opened the door, she was surprised to find her neighbor, Sarah, standing on the porch. "Karen." "Hi," Sarah said tentatively. I wanted to talk to you about your garage." Karen's eyes narrowed. "So, you're the one responsible for this atrocity, aren't you?" Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. "What? No, of course not. I wanted to apologize." "Apologize?" Karen scoffed. "For what, exactly? Letting your children vandalize my property." No, it's not like that at all," Sarah said hastily. I actually did some research, and I think I know why your garage is glowing." Karen's brow furrowed. "Research? What are you talking about?" "It's a special kind of glow-in-the-dark paint," Sarah explained. "It's actually used for security purposes to help deter burglars and intruders." Karen's expression shifted from suspicion to confusion. Security purposes. But why would someone put that on my garage? Sarah shrugged apologetically. "I'm not sure, but I think it might have been a well-intentioned mistake. The paint is supposed to make a building more visible at night, to deter would-be criminals." Karen's eyes narrowed again. "Are you saying someone thought my garage needed extra security?" I suppose that's possible," Sarah said, shifting uncomfortably. "Look, I just wanted to let you know what I found out, in case it helps. I know how upsetting this must be for you." Karen's lips pressed into a thin line. "Well, thank you for the information, Sarah. But I can assure you, this is far from over." The next day, Karen marched up to the front door of her neighbor, Meredith, her face set in a determined scowl. She'd spent the better part of the morning doing her own research, and she was convinced she had the culprit. Meredith opened the door, eyebrows raised in surprise. "Karen, what a pleasant surprise. To what do I owe this visit?" "Cut the pleasantries, Meredith," Karen snapped. "I know it was you." Meredith blinked, confusion written across her features. "I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand." "No, it was me." "The glow-in-the-dark paint on my garage," Karen hissed. "Don't try to play innocent with me. I know it was your idea." Meredith's eyes widened in realization. "Oh, you mean the paint." "Karen, I can assure you, I had nothing to do with that. Don't lie to me. Karen's voice rose in pitch. I've done my research, Meredith. I know all about that special security paint and how it's supposed to deter burglars. Well, I'm not buying it. Meredith held up her hands in a placating gesture. Karen, I promise you, I had nothing to do with that. I'm just as confused by it as you are. Likely story, Karen scoffed. You're always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, trying to improve the neighborhood. Well, this time you've gone too far. I'm telling you the truth, Meredith insisted, her brow furrowed with genuine concern. I have no idea who put that paint on your garage, but I can assure you it wasn't me. Karen's eyes narrowed, her expression filled with skepticism. I find that hard to believe. You're the one who's always going on about home security and crime prevention. This reeks of your meddling. Meredith shook her head, her frustration becoming more evident. Karen, listen to me. I had nothing to do with this. If you have a problem, you should take it up with the Homeowners Association, not accuse your neighbors of vandalism. The Homeowners Association. Karen's voice dripped with disdain. They're useless. No, Meredith, this is between you and me, and I won't rest until I get to the bottom of it. With that, Karen whirled around and stormed off, leaving a bewildered Meredith in her wake. As she marched back to her own house, Karen's mind raced, determined to uncover the truth and exact her revenge. The next morning, Karen woke with a renewed sense of purpose. She'd spent the better part of the night plotting her next move, and she was confident that she was closing in on the culprit. Grabbing her phone, she scrolled through her contacts and tapped on the number for the local news station. Yes, hello, this is Karen Simmons. I have a story that I think your viewers would be very interested in. After a brief conversation, Karen hung up with a satisfied smile. Now, all she had to do was wait. It didn't take long for the news crew to arrive, their van pulling up to the curb in front of Karen's house. The reporter, a young woman with a microphone in hand, approached Karen with a friendly smile. Mrs. Simmons, thank you for reaching out to us. I understand you have a story you'd like to share. Karen nodded, her expression solemn. Yes, it's a very concerning situation, and I feel it's important for the community to be aware of what's happening. She led the reporter over to her garage, the glow-in-the-dark paint still shining brightly in the morning light. As you can see, my garage has been vandalized with this fluorescent paint, and I believe I know who's responsible. The reporter's eyes widened. Vandalized? That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence to support that claim? Evidence? Karen scoffed. Just look at it. This is clearly an act of malicious mischief, and I'm convinced my neighbor, Meredith, is behind it. The reporter frowned. Meredith? Have you confronted her about this? Of course I have, Karen said, her voice rising in pitch. But she denies any involvement. Can you believe that? The nerve of her, trying to cover up her own wrongdoing. The reporter nodded slowly. I see. And what makes you so certain that Meredith is responsible? Karen drew herself up, her chin held high. Well, for one, she's always been fixated on home security and crime prevention. And this glow-in-the-dark paint is supposed to be a deterrent for burglars, isn't it? The reporter nodded. Yes, that's what I've read as well. But couldn't this have been a mistake or a well-intentioned act? A mistake, Karen scoffed. Absolutely not. This is a deliberate attack on my property, and I won't stand for it. I'm calling on the community to join me in demanding justice. The reporter hesitated, sensing the tension in the air. Well, Mrs. Simmons, we'll certainly look into this and try to get to the bottom of it. For now, perhaps it would be best to approach this situation with an open mind and... Open mind? Karen interrupted, her eyes flashing with anger. There's nothing to be open-minded about. This is a clear case of vandalism, and I intend to see that the culprit is held accountable. The reporter glanced down at her notes, then back up at Karen. All right. Well, we'll be sure to follow up on this story. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. As the news crew packed up and drove away, Karen watched with a satisfied smile. Now the whole community would know about her plight, and she was certain that justice would be served. The local news segment on Karen's glowing garage scandal aired that evening, and it wasn't long before the story began to spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Meredith, Karen's neighbor, was at home when her phone started buzzing with concerned messages from other residents. She sighed, bracing herself for the inevitable confrontation with Karen. Sure enough, a few minutes later, the doorbell rang, and there stood Karen, her expression a mix of triumph and outrage. "Meredith," she said, her voice dripping with accusation. "I see you've been the talk of the town." Meredith frowned. "Karen, I told you. I had nothing to do with that paint on your garage. Why are you insisting on dragging me into this?" "Don't play dumb with me," Karen snapped. "The whole neighborhood knows about your little security scheme now. How dare you try to sabotage my property?" Meredith held up her hands in a placating gesture. "I'm telling you the truth, Karen. I had absolutely nothing to do with that paint. I'm just as confused by it as you are." "Liar." Karen's face was flushed with anger. "You're always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong, trying to improve the neighborhood. Well, this time you've gone too far." Meredith's brow furrowed with concern. "Karen, please, you need to listen to me. I understand you're upset, but accusing your neighbors isn't going to solve anything." "Isn't going to solve anything?" Karen scoffed. "You've made this a community-wide issue, Meredith. Now everyone is talking about my glowing garage and how I'm some kind of security risk." Meredith winced. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Karen, but I can assure you I had nothing to do with this. Perhaps we could all work together to find a solution." "A solution?" Karen's eyes narrowed. "The only solution I'm interested in is seeing you held accountable for your actions." "My actions?" Meredith repeated, her voice rising in frustration. "Karen, I've told you, I didn't do this. Why can't you just believe me?" "Because I know better," Karen snapped. "You're always sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. And this time, you've gone too far." With that, she turned on her heel and stormed back to her own house, leaving a bewildered and concerned Meredith in her wake. As the sun set, casting an eerie glow over the neighborhood, Karen paced back and forth in her living room, her mind racing. She was determined to prove Meredith's guilt, no matter what it took. The next day, Karen took her case to the Homeowners Association, determined to force them to take action against Meredith. She sat across the table from the HOA board members, her gaze unwavering. "Clearly, this is a violation of the neighborhood covenants. Someone has deliberately vandalized my property, and I demand that you hold the responsible party accountable." The HOA president, a weary-looking man named Mr. Carlson, sighed. "Mrs. Simmons, we've been over this. The police have already determined that this isn't an act of vandalism. Without any clear evidence of wrongdoing, there's not much we can do." Karen's eyes narrowed. "Not much you can do. This is an outrage. My neighbor, Meredith, is clearly behind this, and I have proof." Mr. Carlson raised a hand. "Proof? What proof do you have, Mrs. Simmons?" "Proof?" Karen scoffed. "Just look at the evidence. Meredith has always been obsessed with home security, and this glow-in-the-dark paint is supposed to be a deterrent for burglars. It's a clear case of her meddling in my affairs." The other board members exchanged uneasy glances, but Mr. Carlson remained impassive. "Mrs. Simmons, even if that were the case, we can't simply take action based on your suspicions. We need to follow proper procedures and—" "Proper procedures?" Karen interrupted, her voice rising in pitch. "This is my home, my sanctuary, and it's been violated. Don't you understand?" Mr. Carlson sighed. "I understand that you're upset, Mrs. Simmons, but we can't just go around accusing people without solid evidence. That would be unethical and could open us up to legal liability. Karen's jaw clenched, her frustration evident. So you're telling me that there's nothing you can do? That I just have to live with this abomination on my property? Mr. Carlson nodded apologetically. I'm afraid so, Mrs. Simmons. Unless we receive a formal complaint from another resident or uncover clear evidence of wrongdoing, our hands are tied. Karen sat back in her chair, her mind racing. She couldn't believe that the Homeowners Association was refusing to take action. It was time to take matters into her own hands. As she left the HOA meeting, Karen's eyes narrowed with determination. She was going to get to the bottom of this, even if it meant going to extreme measures. The following night, as the neighborhood slept, Karen crept out to Meredith's house, a can of black paint in hand. She couldn't trust the Homeowners Association to do the right thing, so she had decided to take matters into her own hands. Carefully, she approached Meredith's garage, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but the overwhelming sense of injustice had clouded her judgment. With steady hands, Karen began to paint over the glow-in-the-dark markings, determined to erase the evidence of Meredith's supposed crime. As she worked, a sense of satisfaction washed over her. Finally, she was taking control of the situation. But just as she was putting the finishing touches on her work, a sudden movement in the shadows caught her eye. Whirling around, she found herself face to face with Meredith, who had been watching the entire time. Karen, what on earth are you doing? Meredith's voice was a mix of confusion and alarm. Karen froze, the paint can in her hand trembling. Meredith, I can explain. Explain? Meredith's eyes narrowed. You're vandalizing my property, Karen. I should call the police. Karen's heart raced. No, Meredith, please. You don't understand. This is all your fault. If you hadn't. My fault. Meredith interrupted, her voice rising in anger. Karen, I've told you a dozen times I had nothing to do with the paint on your garage. And now you're trying to cover up your own crime? Karen opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat. She knew she had been caught red-handed, and there was no way to justify her actions. Meredith shook her head, her expression a mix of disappointment and disgust. I can't believe you, Karen. I thought we were friends, but this is unforgivable. Friends? Karen scoffed, her pride refusing to let her admit defeat. Don't be ridiculous, Meredith. You've been trying to sabotage me from the beginning. Meredith sighed. You're impossible, Karen. I've tried to be reasonable, but you've left me no choice. She pulled out her phone and began to dial. Karen's eyes widened in panic. Wait, Meredith, please. Don't call the police. I'll make this right. I promise. But Meredith shook her head. It's too late for that, Karen. You've made your choice, and now you have to face the consequences. As the sirens grew louder in the distance, Karen knew that her world was about to come crashing down. She had let her anger and paranoia cloud her judgment, and now she was facing the ultimate price. In the end, her misguided quest for justice had only led to her own downfall. A cautionary tale of how even the best intentions can go horribly wrong.